Okay, boys, we're going to look at converting between units of area. So let's just have a look at this table just to get some idea of what units of area look like. So in the first row here, we're looking at the square millimetre. This is how we write millimetres squared, millimetres with a little 2 up there. And the actual size, if you look at this tiny orange square here, that is a square millimetre. So that's how tiny 1 millimetre square is. Next, we have a square centimetre, and this is how we write the square centimetre, centimetre with the power of 2. And this is the actual size of a square centimetre. So it's 1 centimetre high and 1 centimetre wide. So compare the square millimetre to the square centimetre. You can see the square centimetre is much bigger. Then we've got the square metre. The square metre has sides 1 metre by 1 metre. So we're not going to draw it here, but just imagine the metre ruler in the classroom and imagine drawing a square which has got sides 1 metre by 1 metre. Then we've got something called a hectare. Hectare, the symbol is HA. Okay, the hectare is a square with side lengths 100 metres by 100 metres. Then we've got the square kilometre, which is written as kilometres with a little power of 2 there, and that's got a side length of 1,000 metres. So we're going to look at converting between all these different units of area. So let's start off with a centimetre. So a centimetre a centimetre square is 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre. Now, 1 centimetre is equal to 10 millimetres. Okay, 10 millimetres. So if we're working out the area of this square, we'd go base times height, which is 1 times 1, which is obviously 1 centimetre squared. And the other thing we could do, because we know that a centimetre is 10 millimetres, we could say the area of that square is also equal to 10 millimetres times 10 millimetres, which is 100 square millimetres. Okay, so from this we can see that 1 square centimetre is equal to 100 square millimetres. In other words, I could take one of these little orange squares, right, and then make 100 of those, and 100 of those will fit inside the 1 square centimetre. Okay, so let's have a look at something else. Let's look at the square metre. Now, these are not to scale, obviously, but imagine I've got a square metre, 1 metre by 1 metre. Now, 1 metre is also equal to 100 centimetres. So I'm going to write that down as well. 100 centimetres. And that's also equal to 100 centimetres. So let's look at the area of this square here. It's base times height. So I could write it down as 1 metre times 1 metre, which is 1 square metre. But I also know that 1 metre is 100 centimetres. So I could write this down as 100 centimetres times 100 centimetres, which is equal to 10,000 square centimetres. Okay, so that means from this I can see that the area of that square is 1 square metre, but in square centimetres it's 10,000 square centimetres. So I can write down that 1 square metre is equal to 10,000 square centimetres. Okay, that brings us to let's do the kilometre, the square kilometre next. And then we'll do the hectare. Now, because kilometres is bigger, I'm going to do the bigger square down here. So let's just jump down to here. This is not to scale, obviously. So 1 kilometre, this is a 1 kilometre square. So it's 1 kilometre wide and 1 kilometre high. Now, a kilometre is 1,000 metres. Kilometre is 1,000 metres. So let's work out the area of this square, right? Base times height. Let's do it in kilometres first. So the base is 1 kilometre times by 1 kilometre, which is 1 kilometre squared. Now we know a kilometre is 1,000 metres, so I could also write that this is 1,000 metres times 1,000 metres, which is equal to, well, 1 with 6 zeros, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 square metres. Okay, so 1 kilometre squared is equal to 1 million square metres. So we could write that down here. So 1 square kilometre is 1,000,000 square metres. 1,000,000 square metres. All right. Now, let's go to the hectare. Now, the hectare is, let's say this, just say the area of this square is 1 hectare. Now, a hectare is 10,000 square metres. It's actually a square which is 100 metres by 100 metres. And they use the hectare to measure large areas of land like farms. So let's start off with the area in metres. Let's do metres first. 100 metres times 100 metres. That's 10,000 square metres. Okay, 10,000 square metres. So that means 1 hectare, we write it as HA. 1 hectare is equal to 10,000 square metres. There we go. All right, so they're all the units that we're looking at. So starting off with 1 centimetre squared is equal to 100 millimetres squared. Here we go. Then we've got 1 metre, right? 1 metre squared is 10,000 centimetres squared. Then we've got the hectare. Hectare is 100 metres by 100 metres, as you can see from the table up here. So 1 hectare is 10,000 square metres. Then we've got the kilometre squared, and we found that the kilometre square is equal to 1 million square metres, and no need for this square for that diagram. So that square was not needed for the notes. We can ignore that. All right, let's now see if we can work out a diagram, a conversion diagram that we're going to use to answer some questions. So let's start off with the centimetre squared and the millimetre squared. Now, if I'm going to go from the number 1 to the number 100, so going from the number 1 to the number 100, that's times by 100, isn't it? Okay, and to go the other way, to go from 100 to 1, that's the opposite, divide by 100. So that gives us our first part of the diagram. Centimetre squared to millimetre squared, we're timesing by 100. Right, centimetre squared to millimetre squared, timesing by 100. And then to go the other way, we're dividing by 100. Okay, now metre squared to centimetre squared. All right, so 1 meter squared is 10,000 centimeters squared. So to go from meter squared to centimeter squared, to go from 1 to 10,000, we're multiplying by 10,000. So let's write that on there. So multiplying by 10,000, go from meter squared to centimeter squared. Now to go the other way, we're doing the opposite, which is divide by 10,000. Now kilometer squared, if you go back to your notes, you can see 1 kilometer squared is a million meters squared. So to go from kilometer squared to meter squared, I'm timesing by a million. So 6 zeros. Then to go from meter squared to kilometer squared, I'm dividing by a million. So 6 zeros. All right. Now what about hectares and meters squared? Now we know that 1 hectare, so you've got a 10,000 square meters. So if you look at my number 1 here, to go from 1 to 10,000, I'm timesing by 10,000. So to go from hectares to meters squared, I'm timesing by 10,000. And to go the other way, so 10,000 got 4 zeros. To go the other way, I'm dividing by 10,000. Okay, so we're going to use these diagrams now to work out the answers to the following questions. Okay, first question, 3 centimeters squared to millimeters squared. So going from centimeters squared to millimeters squared. So if you look at our diagram, follow the arrows. Centimeters squared to millimeters squared, I'm timesing by 100. So I've got to times 3, I've got to times this by 100, right? And that gives me 300. So that's my answer, 300 millimeters squared. Now, the hashtag questions I want you to do by yourself. So I want you to pause the video and have a go at the hashtag questions. So this is meter squared to centimeter squared. So here we go, meter squared to 7 centimeters squared. So it's times by 10,000. So pause the video and have a go. Okay, so we're going to times this by 10,000. So 4 zeros. Now, if I'm timesing by 10,000, I'm moving the decimal point, the number of places that matches the number of zeros. So I've got 4 zeros there, which means I'm moving the decimal point 4 places to the right. So if I was to do this without a calculator, the decimal point starts here, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's my decimal point landing there. Then inside those bumps, inside those spaces, I put zeros. So my answer should be 53,000 square centimeters. Okay. Now let's have a look at the next one. We're going to go from centimeters squared to meters squared. So if I go back to my diagram here, centimeters squared to meters squared, it says divide by 10,000. Okay, follow the arrow, centimeters squared to meters squared, divide by 10,000. So let's come back over here. So I'm going to divide this by 10,000. Now, if I'm dividing by 10,000, I'm moving the decimal place left according to the number of zeros in 10,000. So there's 4 zeros in 10,000, so I'm going to move the decimal place 4 places to the left. Now, where is the decimal place? Well, in a whole number, the decimal point is after the last digit. So it starts there. So I'm going to go 4 places left starting from here. So starting from there, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So decimal point goes there. Inside the space, I put a 0, and then in front of the decimal point, I put a 0. So my answer is 0.048 0.83. Okay, so make sure you've copied all this down, and you're going to do the hashtag example yourself now. So pause the video, have a go at the next question. So we're going from millimeters squared to centimeters squared. So if I come back up here, millimeters squared is here. There it is. You're going to go to centimeters squared. So you're going to divide by 100. Okay, so pause the video and see how you go. Okay, so dividing by 100. Now, if I'm dividing by 100, there's 2 zeros and 100. So I'm going to move the decimal point left 2 places. So in a whole number, if you remember, the decimal point starts after the last digit, and I'm going to go left 2 places. So 1, 2, decimal point goes there, and I put a 0 out the front. So my answer is 0.68. All right, let's have a look at the next question. We're going from meters squared to millimeters squared in this one. So go back to the diagram. Meters squared to millimeters squared. Now I've got 2 jumps to make here. I'm timesing by 10,000 and then timesing by 100. Okay, now count how many zeros there are. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 there, and there's 2 there. So I can do 2 separate jumps by timesing by 10,000 or timesing by 100, or I could do 1 jump from there to there. And to do that 1 jump, I'm going to include all of the zeros here and all the zeros here. That's 6 zeros. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I'm going to move the decimal point 6 places to the right with my question. Okay, so timesing by 10,000 and timesing by 100 the same as timesing by 1,000,000 in one go. So let's do that. We're going to times 72 by 1,000,000. Okay, 246. So that's going to be 72 and then million. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 72 meters squared is 72 million millimeters squared. Now let's have a look at the next question. You're going to pause the video now and have a go at this one, converting 0.5 kilometers squared to centimeters squared. So going back up the top, kilometers squared to centimeters squared. I missed that there. Kilometers squared to centimeters squared. Okay, so to go from kilometers to squared to centimeters squared, I'm doing 2 jumps, aren't I? I'm timesing by 1,000,000 and I'm timesing by 10,000. Now, let's just rub out the last little bit that I did. Just here. Okay, now we are going to do 1 jump. So we're going to go from kilometers squared all the way to centimeters squared. Now, timesing by 1,000,000 and then timesing by 10,000. There's 6 zeros in 1,000,000. There's 4 zeros in 10,000. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 zeros in 1,000,000. And then add the 4 zeros from the 10,000. Now, that means you're going, because I've got 10 zeros in there, we're going to move the decimal place 10 digits to the right. So kilometers squared to centimeters squared, we're going to move the decimal place 10 digits to the right. So if I've got my digits here, I'm starting the decimal point here, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So in those spaces there, I'm going to be putting zeros. Do a decimal point just there. So I'm not going to put down the 0 at the beginning because we've got, we're going to read that just as 5. So 5 there, and then count the zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 should be 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, let's have a look at the next question. Well, that's a mistake there. It should not be millimeters squared to millimeters squared. We're going to go from millimeters squared to meters squared. So for this question here, just cross out one of the m's. We're going to treat this as meters squared. Let's just get rid of that altogether. All right, so we're going to go from millimeters squared to meters squared. So let's go back to our diagram. Now, millimeters squared to meters squared, that is 2 jumps to the left. Divide by 100 and then divide by 10,000. Now there's 2 zeros there and there's 4 zeros there. So to do this in a single jump, I'm going to divide by 1,000,000 because 1,000,000 has got 6 zeros. Okay, so divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can divide by 1,000,000 here. So let's move that down. I'm going to divide this number here by 1,000,000. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That means I'm moving the decimal point 6 places to the left. So how do I do that? Well, if here are my digits, 2, 3, 5, 0. My decimal point is after the last digit there, because it's a whole number. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Decimal point lands there. I put zeros in the spaces and a 0 before the decimal point. So 0.00, 2, 3, 5, 0. Okay, now I meant to make this a hashtag question for number 8, so I'd like you to pause the video and have a go at question 8. We're going from centimeters squared to kilometers squared, so let's just have a look at that. Now if I just rub out the previous bit just to make room. Okay, so to go from centimeters squared to kilometers squared in one jump, it's 2 jumps, isn't it? There's dividing by 10,000 and dividing by 1,000,000 there. So notice there's 4 zeros there and 6 zeros there. So to do this in a single jump, there, we're going to divide by 1 with 10 zeros. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That means we're going to move the decimal point 10 places to the left. Okay, so pause the video and have a go, see if you can write the answer down. Okay, so to work this one out, I'm going to move the decimal point 10 places to the left. So I'm just going to write down the digits first. All right, so I'm starting my decimal point here, and I'm going 10 places left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, the decimal point lands there, and inside the spaces, I'm going to be putting zeros. Okay, so let's see how we go. 0 there, 0 there, 0 there, 0 there, and a 0 out the front. So writing that down, I've got 0 point. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros there. Okay, and then I've got 2, 3, 5. And then followed by 0, 0, 0. Okay, so now if I moved my decimal point 10 places back to the right, then I should get the same number again. So let's double check. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's correct. Now, There are some zeros we could get rid of here. So we could get rid of, keep those there. I'm just going to put the 2, 3, 5 there. So that's my answer, finally. Okay. Now, last of all, hectares. Let's have a look at hectares. Well, we know for hectares that 1 hectare is 10,000 square metres. So let's have a look. To go from metres squared to hectares, if I go back to my picture, metres squared to hectares, have a look. Metres squared to hectares, metres squared to hectares, we've got to divide by 10,000. Okay, so let's do that now. Right, so we're going to divide by 10,000. So let's do that. Divide by 10,000. So that means I'm going to take 81,000 and divide by 10,000. So I'm moving the decimal point 4 places to the left. So if I have the 81 here, 81,000, I'm starting my decimal point here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it goes between the 8 and the 1. So 8.1, and you've got those zeros after it. But we don't need those zeros, so you can rub those out. So it's just 8.1 hectares. All right. I want you to pause the video and have a go at the next one, question 10. Now for question 10, make sure you look back at the diagram. Okay, so looking back at the diagram, all right, we're going from hectares to metres squared, so you're timesing by 10,000. Okay, so moving the decimal point. I've done the same mistake here, haven't I? Okay, I'll have to fix this up in the notes. So that should be hectares, cross that out. That should be metres squared there. Okay, so hectares to metres squared. So now pause the video and have a go at the question. All right, so times by 10,000. Okay, times by 10,000. We're going to move the decimal point 4 places to the right. So here's my 6, here's my 2. Decimal starts here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Decimal point goes there. Put zeros inside the spaces. Right, and 62,000. Right, 62,000 metres squared is my answer. Okay, now let's have a look at the next one. Hectares to kilometres squared. Now, this is a little bit harder. What we're going to first do is convert hectares to metres squared and then metres squared to kilometres squared. Okay, so we know that as we did in the last one, to go from hectares to metres squared, we're going to times by 10,000. So first of all, I'm going to go 23 times 10,000. Okay, so that's 23 with the 4 zeros, 2, 3. That's meters squared. Okay, so I've converted the hectares to meters squared. Now I've got to convert meters squared to kilometers squared. So just go back to your picture here. Meters squared to kilometers squared, that's here. It's divide by a million. You can see that there, divide by a million. So come back here. We're going to now divide this by a million. So we're going to go 23, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to divide by a million. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's 2, 4, 6. That means we're going to move the decimal place 6 places to the left. Okay, so that means we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it goes there. So that means my answer is 0.23. And we can get rid of all these zeros here. 0.23 kilometers squared. Okay. All right. Now, I want you to have a go at the hashtag question, kilometres squared to hectares. This is the last one. So let's just have a look at that. Kilometres squared. So you just pause the video. Kilometres squared. We're going to convert this to metres squared first. So kilometres squared to metres squared. If we go back to our diagram, kilometres squared to metres squared, I'm timesing by a million. So let's do that. Okay, kilometres squared to metres squared. So let's just draw a little line over here. So kilometres squared to metres squared, I'm timesing by a million. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, that means I'm moving the decimal point 5 places to the right. So there's 3 and 8. So the decimal point starts there. I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places to the right should have been. Put the zeros, decimal point goes there, zeros there. Okay, now that is square meters. Okay, now we need to go from meters squared to hectares. So if you go back to the little diagram up here, meters squared to hectares, we're dividing by 10,000. So come back to here, dividing by, these are harder questions, of course. So now we're going to divide that by 10,000, which means I'm moving my decimal point 4 places to the left. Okay, so let's do that in a different color. So that means I'm starting there going 1, 2, 3, 4. It'll be 380 and hectares is my answer. Okay, that's the lesson for today.